Diane from Millhouse Quilts. Today we're going to talk about rearranging the same block and getting a lot of different looks out of the very same block. My inspiration was this miniature version of a pattern called Mesmerize by Basic Gray. And in our miniature scrap quilt talk, this was an undone quilt. It was on the wall, it was in pieces, but you could kind of get the gist of it. Now it got done, and I love to say it, it's the king size layout in miniature. So the basic block for this is just a real easy one. I have this big version here. I'm doing another one. This is out of batik scraps, but this shows you the basic block. What started all of this was, as I mentioned a little earlier, this was the back on a quilt called Modern Millie. And the same time I was trimming that one, we had another red and white quilt, and the red one was backed by this red corduroy. And I looked at these two fabrics together and I thought, oh, I like those. What can we do with those? And then I thought of this pattern. So I thought, well, let's see what can happen. At that time, my red scrap was really small. So I decided to go in miniature because I didn't have much red. As you can see, I have more red now because I liked it and I went out and bought some more. But that's a different story. I had orange, red, and green, and they all went with this. These are corduroy, which you may not think at first to use, but it's a very soft corduroy and it handles really well, and I love to use it. So I have made little blocks, and I have green ones, orange ones, and red ones. The constant is this fabric is in the middle. It's very splotchy, but you'll see I'm going to play with putting these in different orders. And as they get put in, the color of the corduroy dominates over the multicolored, even though they're kind of equal balance. So we're going to first of all start with, I have piles here. You can see I did a bunch. I'm going to make blocks where I have 4 of the same color. You'll notice this is a directional block. It has an outside corner and an inside little corner. So you can turn it different ways. And as I do this, I'm putting all the little squares in the middle so that it goes around in a square all the way. And so here we have complete squares made out of 4 of each of the blocks. And I have arranged them so that the little square in the center comes together as a center of each one, and then the bigger outer border makes the square. And I've alternated just so that the same color doesn't touch next to each other. Now, you notice the orientation of the block. If I take the top of each block and just turn it so that they all go up, it's going to create a little different look too. Now instead of squares, we still have our square, we still have our 4 together, but there's more of a stacked look, and it's more of a stripe and a row. Even though it's exactly the same number of blocks, exactly the same number of each color, all we've done is change the orientation of half of them. Now, if we do it another way, we can do, this time, I still have the very same number of blocks up there, the very same amount of every color, and what I did was put them in pairs. I have the top going up, but I have alternated so that the same color doesn't touch, and it's a whole different look again, but it is still the exact same number of blocks, exact same number of each color. Now I'm going to take these and I'm going to arbitrarily create a couple of full squares again, like we had originally. This time we have about half of them still going the same way up in rows and pairs, but we traded some of them and made a couple of full squares in the middle of the half squares. We still have everything pointing up here except for when we make the squares. So it's almost the same, but just a little bit different. Now there's another way. I'm going to create diagonal rows, and I'm just going to turn them so they all go down this way. I'm going to have a red row coming down next to an orange row. Now this one's completely different. Each block stands alone. What I have done is I've pointed them all this direction, and I have created diagonal rows of color, red, green, orange, red, green, orange, and I've used the same pattern throughout. Each one stands alone. This is a completely different look than when we had the rows, than when we had the big squares, but we are still making everything out of this one very same block, same colors. So I want to plant the seed that there's a lot of options out there. This is part of the thing that makes us keep coming back to make more, because you see how many ways you can tweak one thing and then think about all the possibilities that are out there. There's just no way you can try it all, but it's really fun to do what you can. Happy quilting from Millhouse Quilts.